Hi everyone, and thanks for tuning in. As you can see from the title of this video, we will discuss more about the dynamics of dating today. As I promised from our previous video, I have a couple of questions I have for David, and I look forward to it. Hi David, and thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Great. So we all know that the romantic relationships are a big part of the culture, and it has evolved with all its pros and cons and unspoken rules. So I was hoping that you could shed some light.
I'll try my best, Alexandrina, yeah.
Great. So let's start with my first question, and it is about the relationship, the intergender relationship that is happening today. What do you think about
Well,
that?
I think it's different from the way it used to be, and maybe that's kind of what you want to talk about. Used to have a society in Great Britain of traditional relationships. It was sort of one man to one woman, and people would kind of pair up, kind of at the local level. Daughters of friends or sons of friends and neighbours would marry each other, have children, and it created strong community bonds because there was so much shared history among members of the community. Now you have government interfering in romantic relationships with men and women, I think, to exploit and profit from intergender relationships. You segregate men and women, you foment a gender war, and then both men and women are more dependent on government than they would be if they were forming relationships together and being independent citizens. So I think that's been the big change over the last generation or two.
Mm-hmm. And is this the only difference?
It's not the only difference, but it's a big
how
difference.
our parents or grandparents used to date.
Yeah, well, it's not the only difference, but it's a major difference. I mean, think about 1960s. You had the birth control pill, so women were able to control pregnancy, and also around that time they were entering the workplace at a much greater extent than they had ever done before. So you kind of have, instead of women marrying men to have provisioning, security and financial provisioning for them and their child,
Right.
It's women and men competing against each other in the workplace. And this helps corporations because you double the pool of labour, you halve the cost of labour. So the cost of labour per unit from a corporation's point of view is halved if you have women in the workplace. This is why business is so keen to promote women in the workplace, because it cuts their labour cost. Instead of having to pay a man to support himself, his wife and their children, you just pay a man to support himself, you pay a woman to support herself, and then you discourage child rearing through advocating for things like abortion and this sort of stuff, having women work through their prime fertility years. That's why you have a decline in the birth rate in the country. And then by promoting divorce laws or facilitating easier divorce, you create more family separation, and it allows or compels women to work to support themselves, which again keeps labour costs low. Yeah.
It sounds like all this marriage seems like a very complex business.
It's complex for sure, yeah. I mean, it's the risk of marriage now compared to the way it used to be. I mean, I was reading just this week that the marriage rate in Great Britain is at its lowest point ever now, and that 1 in 3 millennials will never get married in their entire lives. Women are delaying marriage past their prime fertility, prime beauty years, when it's the easiest for them to get married. And then when they do want to get married, their sexual market value has declined because they've either got a child or two out of wedlock, or because they are less sexually viable than they are compared to younger women than they now are. So men who can date and marry younger women will overlook older women with more baggage or more debt or whatever, and that's the way society is going. Yeah.
Let's go a bit backwards. So before the entire marriage business is the dating.
Right.
What do you think about how people are dating nowadays?
Well, a lot
What's
of
your
dating now
approach?
is online dating, isn't it? It's dating apps and it's short-term dating. I think there's a less interest in longer term relationships from women, driven by women, because women are trying to find the right guy, the best guy for them. So if they're dating a guy who they don't feel is the best guy for them, they move on to the next guy, and they move on to the next guy, they move on to the next guy. As soon as they find the guy that they think is the right one for them, they're amazed that he doesn't want to commit to them, because that man's been trained by other women that, dating is a sort of a short-term thing, and they can get sexual intimacy from women without having to commit to them through marriage and this sort of thing.
So how can we get the dating market back on track?
Well, I think we've got to have strict rules, Alexandrina. I think the best scenario for society is that men and women have someone each. If you have men, the most desirable men with multiple women, and then the rest of men with no women, you create a society based around resentment. And women are not satisfied by sharing men with other women, and men are not satisfied by having no women. So they're going to say, what's the motivation for me to work and pay taxes if I don't get any female access? So a society based around one man, one woman each, I think, is healthier. And I think that we need to get away from these things like women using dating tools as weapons against men. Not only false accusations, but things like child custody, where a man has to pay child support to a woman so that she can look after the child, because she's less capable of looking after the child than he is, because he has more money than her. And instead of it just being money to support the child, it's money to support the child and her. And so I don't agree with that. I think weaponizing pregnancy, where women guilt men into marrying them because they're pregnant accidentally with a child, and also abortion, women aborting babies without the permission of the father. I don't agree with that at all. These are things that are not good. They're not healthy. They don't support a happy society, a happy national society. And that's why I want to get back to a dating and relationship, gender relation country that is fair for men and women.
How does exactly dating influence the politics nowadays?
Well, what happens is you used to have women getting married around the same time they started voting. So if the voting age is 18 and they're getting married at 19, their voting or their political philosophy is geared around their family life, them and their husband and their family, their children, their community. Now you have so many single women, as women delay marriage and delay pregnancy, they are single people, and their political philosophy is geared around feminist-based politics. The politics of there's so many different examples, but reducing the risk for them. If they have a baby without a husband, they can get welfare from the government to support that baby, rather than forcing the woman to get into a stable relationship first before pregnancy. That's an example. All this protect the woman stuff when it comes to false accusations. I mean, we take rape and sexual assault so seriously because we want to protect women. Women exploit this to get cash from the government as part of a victim culture. Oh, I was, abused in some way, so now I need £100,000 from the government, And so we're fomenting mistrust between men and women. You look at all this sexual harassment stuff in businesses. If you're a company that's just had a massive sexual harassment lawsuit from a woman, do you think you're going to be interested in hiring women after that? I don't think so. So it creates this sort of gender-based resentment because women are single, and instead of voting for things that would support economics like men do, they're looking to cover the negative side of being a woman, the cost of supporting a child without the father around. It's like a worst case scenario. Or these sort of gender pay arguments. Women choose lower paid jobs because they like those jobs more, and then they complain that they're making less money than men are. And so you see a lot of politics now which is gender-based politics. It's women against men rather than women and men together to strengthen our society, to strengthen both men and women together. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about the relationship, romantic relationship in the workplace?
Well, you pretty much, even if you look at if you're a man, even looks at a woman in the workplace now or tries to talk to her, you're pretty much going to get fired. So I think those days are long gone. It used to be men and women would meet each other in the workplace and get married because they were working in a company, they had a lot of commonalities because they pursued the same career, and they would get married. Now with all this Me Too stuff, I think men just run a mile before they'd even get into a conversation with a woman at work, and I think those days of dating through work are pretty much over, unless you want a big lawsuit. Companies are going to ban it. Men should go the other way to avoid being sued, and I don't think that's going to happen really anymore. No.
Tell me more about what do you think about dating apps?
Well, dating apps are great if you're not looking to find a serious partner because you have abundant choice. So it's great for men, you've got abundant choice. It's great for women in the short term, but of course when women want to settle down, they're surprised that those men don't want to settle down with them, because why should they? They've got abundant choice. If you cap choice and you have each man and each woman getting involved romantically with the person that's most suitable for them, and you incentivize them to stay together to raise children, that is going to eradicate a lot of the unhappiness you see, or the dissatisfaction you see in dating today. I mean, dating apps are kind of a symptom of a wider problem, I think, but it doesn't facilitate a long-term solution in terms of romantic relationships. Right. I don't feel. I mean, you might get 1-2 examples, but by and large, the more romantic choice you give men and women, the less incentive there is to have a stable monogamous relationship to raise children. Yeah.
And what would be a long-term solution?
I think 18 years is a long-term solution. You can take a child from 0 to 18 to adulthood, and with 2 loving parents supporting that child, and that is what I would call a long-term solution. Yeah, anything around about 20 years.
In a previous video, you talked about the importance of people being educated and having a sex education. What do you think is the role of schools?
I think schools need to take a greater role in preparing young people for future life. Because we've got all these problems. We've got all these problems in society. You've got all these women having children out of wedlock and then asking the taxpayers, who have had no choice over whether that child should be born, to pay for that child for 18 years. Why can't these people have a choice in whether they say, well, we didn't have the mother and the father didn't come and ask us before they got pregnant whether we needed to pay for this? And it's costing our country hundreds of billions and trillions of pounds to keep paying for all this stuff. It's costing unborn children who have yet to be born, who are going to have to grow up and pay for all this welfare-based, these pregnancies out of wedlock, or pregnancies to women where the man has no job or no prospect of earning money. So if you can disincentivize all that, we're saving our country billions of pounds that can be used to, it can go back to the people who earned it, or it can be used to invest, in more productive things. Yeah, that's why I bring it up. I mean, you can't switch on the television in Britain now without women complaining about something to do with men. So how don't we prevent this from happening in the first place? Why don't we educate men and women better? Something's going wrong somewhere to have all this discontent, this gender-based discontent, all these mental health complaints that all these women have nowadays. What's the cause of all this? Well, it's starting with, a lack of understanding about how to have healthy, happy relationships with the opposite sex, isn't it? And if we can get back to that, where women feel protected and provided for and safe in their relationship, then I think you can avoid a lot of these problems and financial burdens, yeah.
And how do you think dating will look in 10, 15 years?
I think it will look worse than it is now. I think it's getting worse, yeah. I think you're going to have a huge volume of the male population with no female access at all, and I think they'll turn to these sort of sex robots and all this sort of stuff. And I think you'll have women that'll either never get married, and they'll have to kind of have, children in vitro fertilization with no father and raise children kind of with the help of the government or with their own money, but of course they've got to look after the child as well as earn the money to pay for it. A lot of children going into daycare or nannies or nursing away from their mother, which again is not healthy. So children, kind of more children growing up without the mother because she's working, without the father because there was no father to start with. And it's just going to lead to more and more unhappiness. Yeah.
What a bright future you see.
That's the trend, that's Alexandrina. I'm trying to prevent this from happening, but I'm in the minority.
Right. Yeah. And you think only education can...
No, I think there's multiple factors. There's multiple factors. I think we need to get back to strict rules between who women can date and who men can date, and promoting and incentivizing relationships where the man and the woman stay together to raise the child. Instead, we incentivize divorce because the woman has full control over no-fault divorce. She can divorce the man at any time, and she gets financially rewarded for doing so. And so that disincentivizes men to get married. Any man that's grown up where his parents went through some rancorous divorce, he's going to be saying to himself, well, why am I going to go down this road the next time? Women that have grown up without a father, they're going to be distrusting of men. They're going to fear abandonment. So they're going to, any problem in the relationship, they're jumping ship to the next man straight away. So everything in society today is geared towards relationships not working out, relationship fragmentation. Whereas I want to have all the incentives towards men and women staying together, breeding children that have great parental role models that stay together, and then they, in the future, they form relationships where they stay together because they've had a great parental example. But we're the opposite of that right now, yeah.
Because now we have more freedom.
Women have more freedom to leave relationships.
And men not?
Men have always had the same amount of freedom. Yeah, well, men are really disincentivized from leaving their wife because it's going to cost them so much in divorce. They've got to pay the alimony, they've got to pay the child support, they've got to lose their house. So men are really not incentivized to leave women. Women are incentivized to leave men. They get the money from the previous husband and the money from the next husband. So it's like a double dip. But of course it doesn't benefit children, and it doesn't benefit the sons of those women from getting married to the daughters of women in the next generation.
And how is this all tied up to false accusations?
Well, I think false accusations are a symptom of a greater virus, and that being, everything we've discussed, this gender fragmentation that's driven by big government and big business. And, false accusations are just another way for women to earn money from men, or the state to earn money from men above and beyond taxation on the basis of grievance or perceived grievance. So women become kind of government informants against men, and it foments more distrust. Like I said, I got no problem with genuine accusations, but we live in this society now of hysteria around rape and sexual assault, so everything's kind of rape and sexual assault. Women are lauded for coming forward, and it's just a way to take money from men, redistribute it through government to women, or just for government to keep, through unattractive women to make money from men that they wouldn't automatically make, because men are more want to spend money on attractive women because that's where they're getting romantic value from. Unattractive women want to get in the way of that transaction and take money from men for them that men wouldn't voluntarily be paying for.
Obviously a very unique perspective. So I would be very happy to challenge you, and I will ask our viewers to comment down below and ask a couple of questions. Do you agree or disagree? What's your opinion about that? And I will make sure to ask David next time. Thank you, David, for your time.
Thank you very much.